Nate had spent countless summers hiking through the wilderness, seeking solitude and peace in nature. After a draining year at his office job, he needed a break, so he packed his tent, supplies, and a couple of books, aiming to lose himself in the quiet woods for a week. The first few days went by smoothly. Nate camped near a river, and the rhythmic sound of the flowing water lulled him to sleep each night. But on the fourth day, while exploring a different part of the forest, he stumbled upon something unusual. Hidden behind dense thickets was an old cabin, almost entirely overgrown with vines and moss. The wood was warped and rotting, and one of the windows hung askew, shattered long ago. The sight of it unsettled him. It was strange. Remote cabins weren't uncommon, but this one seemed abandoned for decades, as if no one had set foot near it in years. He felt a sense of unease prickling the back of his neck, like he was trespassing somewhere he shouldn't be. But curiosity got the better of him, and he approached the cabin to take a closer look. Pushing open the creaking door, he entered cautiously. The interior was sparse and decayed, with dust coating every surface. There was a small table in the corner, a rusted stove, and a bed frame covered with a moldy, moth-eaten mattress. He noticed an odd smell too, a stale, earthy odor that made the air feel thick and suffocating. On the far side of the room was an old photo hanging askew on the wall. It showed a family, a man, a woman, and a young child, all smiling in front of the very cabin Nate now stood in. The photo was faded, but he could make out their faces well enough to feel an unsettling familiarity. The man's expression, in particular, seemed almost alive, his eyes staring back at Nate with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. That night, Nate couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The sounds of the forest, usually so calming, seemed amplified and hostile. Branches cracking, leaves rustling. It was as if someone or something was moving around his campsite, staying just out of sight. The following morning, Nate planned to pack up and leave, but as he gathered his things, he found something unusual. His campfire from the night before had been rearranged. The stones were shifted, forming an almost perfect circle, and his supplies were scattered around the campsite. He hadn't left them that way. Shaken, Nate decided to check the cabin again before he left. Something inside him urged him to go back, to see if he'd missed anything. The cabin was exactly as he'd left it, except for one small detail, the photo of the family. It had fallen off the wall, and as he bent down to pick it up, he noticed a strange symbol scrawled on the back. It was faint, barely visible, but it looked like a handprint, smeared in something dark and dry, like old blood. His heart pounded as he stepped back, dropping the photo in shock. He hadn't seen the symbol before, but a deep primal part of him recognized it as a warning. That night, Nate decided to sleep in his car, abandoning his tent in favor of the safety of locked doors and steel walls. But even inside his vehicle, he couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. He tried to sleep but found himself staring out at the forest, watching shadows dance between the trees. Every creak of the car, every whisper of wind, felt like it was drawing him back toward the cabin. Just after midnight, he heard a soft tapping on the rear window. Slowly, he turned, his body frozen in fear. In the darkness, illuminated only by the faint moonlight, he saw the outline of a hand, pressed firmly against the glass. The handprint was smeared, almost like it was dragged downwards, leaving streaks that vanished into the night. He stared, paralyzed, until the handprint faded away, as if it had never been there. The next morning, Nate left the woods without looking back. He drove hours back to the city, his mind racing, images of the cabin, and the family photo etched permanently into his memory. But even after he returned home, the forest didn't leave him. He would wake up in the middle of the night, hearing soft tapping at his window, seeing smudged handprints that vanished by morning. Months later, in an attempt to find closure, Nate researched the area. He learned that a family had once lived in that forest cabin, disappeared one night without a trace, the cabin left to rot. No one ever figured out what happened to them, and the cabin became a local legend, a place hikers avoided. To this day, Nate is haunted by what he saw. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the faded, smiling family in the photograph, eyes wide open, staring directly at him. He knows he wasn't supposed to find the cabin, or perhaps it wasn't supposed to find him. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey. If you enjoyed the fright, don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow horror fans, and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales. Stay spooky, and we'll see you next time.